The question is that Amendment 20068.1 in the name of Douglas Lumsden, which seeks to amend Motion 20068 in the name of Graham Day, on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau setting out a business programme, be agreed. And members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. I call Tess White for a point of order.
Presiding officer, my app wouldn't work. I would have voted yes.
Thank you, Ms White. We'll ensure that's recorded. The result of the vote on amendment number 20068.1 in the name of Douglas Lumsden is yes 34, no 89. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. The next question is that motion 20068 in the name of Graham Day on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau setting out a business programme be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. The motion is therefore agreed. The next item of business is consideration of business motion 20069 in the name of Graham Day on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau on timetabling of a bill at stage 2. Any member who wishes to speak to the motion, please press the request to speak button now. And I call on Graham Day to move the motion.
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Minister. No member has asked to speak to the motion. Therefore, the question is that motion 20069 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. The motion is therefore agreed. The next item of business is consideration of Parliamentary Bureau motion 20070 on approval of an SSI. And I ask Graham Day on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau to move the motion.
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Minister. I now call on Tim Eagle.
Yes, thank you, Presiding Officer. Well, what tonight has shown is a shocking state that this government is in and desperately a need for change. Presiding Officer, let me tell you a tale, though, of grand ambitions and puffed-up promises. Oh, you can sigh, but I'll go on for a few minutes yet. And that is, in actual fact, has delivered a policy so wet it is tearing our farms into bureaucratic bogs. Because before us stands a party that once said it would make Scotland a global leader in sustainable agriculture, a party that would support food production, fight climate change and back rural communities. Yes, the SNP, ever the deliverer of words, rarely, if ever, the deliverer of action. When the Agriculture and Rural Communities Scotland Act 2024 was passed, the SNP promised a 5-year rural support plan, a genuine Scottish framework giving farmers, crofters and food producers real certainty about the future. Fast forward to December 2025, and what do we have? No rural support plan. A change to the Scottish suckle beef support scheme that failed to get it right the first time and is now being amended in this SSI after we told them to do it. And new greening rules before us.
Let's hear Mr. Eagle.
Pages of regulation just to get a slice of what used to be simple support. I'll happily take Jamie Halker-Johnson.
Jamie Halker-Johnston.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to my colleague Tim Eagle, and I just remind Chamber of my register of interests as a partner in the farming business, member of NFUS. SNP's changes to greening support and removal of the exemptions will, as an Orkney farmer told me, have one hell of an impact on our island farmers and crofters, putting additional costs and burdens on them. It's absolutely right that Scottish Conservatives are voting against this SSI tonight, but would Tim Eagle agree with me that any MSP who represents island communities impacted by these changes should be voting against it this evening?
Tim Eagle.
What I would say to Mr Halker-Johnson is that anybody that votes for this tonight is, in my opinion, mad. Because actually what the SNP government said they would deliver and what they actually have delivered is so far apart, you couldn't possibly bring them together. It's crazy to vote for it. Suddenly, in this SSI, under the new greening rules, if you have over 15 hectares of arable or even temporary grassland, you must set aside 5%, soon to be 7%. No idea why it's 7%. We've just plucked that out of thin air.
Point of order, Mr Eagle. Point of order, Patrick Harvey. Harvey.
I'm grateful, Presiding Officer. It may have been my hearing, but I thought I heard a mental health slur from a member who just chastised the chamber for respect to others. Can I ask you, Presiding Officer, in your judgment, was that language respectful?
What I would say to all members, as we're having a fairly lively debate this evening, is that at all times please be courteous and respectful in your language, and at all times think about how that language may impact others. Mr Eagle.
Happy to discuss that outside the chamber, perhaps. Not quite sure what I did. It may sound...
Let's hear the member.
This is serious.
This may sound green and virtuous, but as NFUS Scotland themselves point out, and they are at the heart of agriculture in Scotland, cramming in more EFAs risks undermining mixed and grass-based systems, hurting small herds and craft, and damaging food production and farm viability, not to mention piling on paperwork and inspection burdens. Greening under Tier 2, once sold as a bold, flexible, farmer-friendly way to deliver climate and biodiversity outcomes, with multiple options, when in fact the reality is now very different. And I still have this nagging doubt that the miserable IT system we all know so much about is the real reason for the lack of the options before us today. What we now have is a policy by drip feed on life support, legacy support limping on while the future policy framework remains undefined, underfunded and unclear. This is not leadership. We in the Scottish Conservatives, I believe farming deserves better. Rural support, multi-annual funding, real clarity and respect for those working the land, and even really radical stuff, like supporting food production. So perhaps the SNP should stop hiding behind green labels, deliver the support they promised, or step aside and let those who value food, Scotland's rural communities, get on with the real work. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
I call on the Minister, Jim Fairley, to respond.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. And I would point out to Mr Eagle, if he doesn't want the charge of being performative, don't be performative. Because that's exactly what that was. He knows the processes that have been gone through. He knows the debates that have happened. He knows that this has already been voted on. He also knows that this is the right thing to do. So, Presiding Officer, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to make a statement on these regulations. We have committed to providing a replacement Scottish Rural Development Programme scheme as set out in the Vision for Agriculture, the Agricultural Reform Route Map and the Agriculture and Rural Communities Scotland Act 2024. Greening changes are part of a phased transition to the new support framework, enabling greening payments to support the commitment to Tier 2 support as set out in that route map. These regulations improve the provisions for ecological focus areas by requiring more businesses to undertake EFA activities as a condition of their greening payment, increasing the area of land management as EFAs and widening the options and choices available for those undertaking those activities. These changes have been designed to ensure they will deliver environmental improvements while supporting sustainable, productive agricultural businesses. And I'll take an intervention from Liam MacArthur.
Liam MacArthur.
I'm very grateful to the Minister for taking an intervention. He'll be aware of the relatively high take-up of agri-environment measures in Orkney, but the fact that those cannot be counted as part of the EFAs does potentially penalise early adopters of environmental measures. So will he accept those concerns, as well as the concerns being expressed about the scaling up of these measures in future, the implications that could have, particularly on smaller farm businesses in island areas?
Minister.
I will address Mr MacArthur's points as I go through my speaking notes here, Presiding Officer. We already know that agriculture in Scotland is diverse, with significant challenges in terms of weather, costs and fragile ecosystems. And that has been addressed by reviewing the existing EFA measures, making more suitable for conditions across all of Scotland, including Orkney, whilst adding more policy value, such as removing the restriction on grazing green cover before the 31st of December. And to ensure the changes are fit for Scotland, we have listened to the industry with wide-ranging engagement with stakeholders, and we will continue to listen as we always have done. And we will refine and will develop our greening measures to ensure they work for all of rural Scotland. The regulations also improve the operation of the provisions for the Scottish Suckler Beef Support Scheme by introducing a derogation from the calving interval requirements for smaller businesses, and that is in response to the concerns raised by smaller producers and the Scottish Crofting Federation, because we are listening and we are engaging with our stakeholders. They will also extend the application submission period to allow submissions to be made up to the 14th of January following the end of the relevant calendar year, which will make it easier for applications to be submitted in time. The regulations mark a significant point in our progress towards our aim of becoming a world leader in sustainable and regenerative agriculture, and they deliver on our previous commitments. We got here by co-developing in detail with our partners, and I fully endorse that approach. These regulations have been considered by the Rural Affairs and Islands Committee, who agreed by division to recommend to the Parliament that I approve them, and I invite the Parliament to do so. Failure to bring these regulations into force would undermine the remarkable progress we have made in efforts to work with our farmers as we continue to provide direct support, as we continue to provide SUS, as we continue to provide a CAV scheme, as we continue to do all of the things that we have done in conjunction with the farming community, who know that they're being represented by this SNP government far better than any other government anywhere in the rest of the UK. Thank you, Presiding Officer.